sights and sounds like you're seeing right now on your screen are what some in Central Texas saw last week as severe storms rolled through. Large hail smashing into car and home windows, leaving behind widespread destruction. This video is from China Spring, and it really shows you the size, speed, and impact the hail had as it splashed into this swimming pool. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for this week's Weather Extra. I'm meteorologist Jillian Grace. It was a busy week full of severe weather for Central Texas, certainly proving that April is one of the most active months for severe storms. 2 rounds of severe storms rolled through our area, one of them on Wednesday and the other on Friday. We start Weather Extra today by taking a look back at the storm reports and hail tracks from last Wednesday's round of severe storms. And the storms on Wednesday did manage to produce 2 tornadoes, both of them very small and did no damage, but they were into the western portions of McLennan County. We also had a wind report of 63 miles per hour at the Waco airport. So yes, we did actually manage to see again some strong winds and also the tornadoes. But the main thing that we saw on Wednesday were the widespread hail reports all over our region. 20 reports of hail across Central Texas, most of the size about 2 to either 2.75 inches. That was most of the widespread hail that we saw. But matter of fact, the largest hailstone reported last Wednesday was 4.5 inches, and that was going to be into the eastern portions of Waco. So here's a loop of the hail tracks that were passing through our area. We did have a few very strong thunderstorms. One of them did actually manage to produce some very large hail in the Dublin area, which is mainly off to our northwest. But those same strong storms moved through Bosque County, right across McLennan County, and that's where we are seeing some of the largest hail reports in our area. Here's a view of when we actually managed to see the golf ball to baseball size hail that did widespread destruction across Valley Mills and also into China Spring. But that same storm system again moved across McLennan County, did bring again widespread hail. Most of this, as it was moving over the city of Waco, did manage to fall down in size. But once the storm crossed over I-35, that's where we saw again that report of 4.5-inch hailstone. Again, that was into the eastern side of Waco. So definitely again, one of the main concerns that we had from Wednesday's storms was just all of the hail that fell in our area. And take a look at some of the images some of you at home sent to us here at KWTX while the severe storms were rolling through. This hailstone on your screen right now fell in Valley Mills and is the size of a baseball, which would measure at about 2.75 inches in diameter. And this hailstone also fell in western McLennan County, which is just about the size of a wiffle ball. Another shot of hail, this one the size of Josephine Blassingame's hand. This also fell in the Valley Mills area. And widespread hail between the size of eggs to baseballs in this image, ranging from about 2 to 2.75 inches. Now let's head out to China Spring, where damage like you see right behind me could be seen street after Wednesday's storms. News 10's Josh Bowering talked with local residents on how the cleanup process began less than 24 hours after the storm.
This entire strip center, all 5 businesses, fell victim to hail damage. One business doesn't even have a sign up anymore.
I was shocked. I never seen that kind of thing happen since I've been here for 20 years. So I never seen that kind of thing happen like this before.
Fans lived in Texas for 2 decades, but says this is the worst he's seen. Despite not having a sign though, they still opened for the morning rush and it paid off.
Actually, we have more regular clientele than maybe the storm make them hungrier.
Just a few doors down, the pharmacy is dealing with a leaky roof on top of the storm flooding their floors.
So we have a lot of air moving equipment in there to pull the humidity out and dry the floors out. Other than that, we're business as normal.
For those at home, roof and window repair are what most are dealing with. The Parrish family credits their backyard trees for saving their windows.
I think we were extremely lucky having the trees placed where they are, that this window and this window only messed up the screens.
Proving their theory true, the only window that was broken didn't have a tree shading it. Now, the first round may be gone, but residents are preparing for round 2, set to hit on Friday.
Hopefully everything stays clear of Central Texas as far as the heavy hail and tornadic activity. So.
And many Central Texas residents experiencing major hail damage, especially to their cars. News 10's Chantel Robb visited two local auto glass repair shops that were very busy the day after the storms.
It was a busy day at Affiliated Auto Glass in Waco as cars damaged by Wednesday's storms lined the crowded parking lot.
6:30 this morning, we've had all 6 lines lit up, and by the time the day's over, we'll do about 150 just today.
The reason? Hail damage that left windshields and windows, even on a police car, completely shattered. This was the case for Shauna Rowland, who watched as baseball-sized hail pelted her red truck.
Really busted up my windshield. We got about over 100 dents on the hood, and they estimated about 300 dents on the top of my roof.
It was equally as busy over at Freddy's Glass, where another China Spring resident awaited repairs on her work car.
Almost every vehicle that was outside in our neighborhood has severe damage to the windows and then also to the body.
All of this cost a pretty penny, anywhere between $200 and $300 just for a windshield.
The back glasses are usually higher. Back glasses range from about $250 to maybe $395. And then if you got a car that's got a windshield that's got lane departure, and you have to get it recalibrated. If you got forward collision alert, when you get it recalibrated, it's usually a couple hundred for that.
Rowland is hopeful insurance will cover at least some of the damages.
They wanted to give me like 3 business days until they could do the glass repair. And unfortunately, with my job schedule, I just can't wait 3 days. So I told them, let me go ahead and get it paid for myself. They just said, keep the receipts and we may be able to reimburse you for that.
But until then, she urges folks to be prepared ahead of Friday's storms.
I was pretty devastated watching this unfold. Preparation is key. I wish we would have made the room in our garage for at least one of our vehicles last night.
In Waco, Chantel Robb, KWTX News 10.
And you at home may be wondering, how does hail this large even form? Well, with answers to our questions, we bring in meteorologist Sean Bellafiore. Sean.
This past week has been an exceptionally dangerous one for severe weather across Central Texas, and a lot of the damage came from very, very, very large hail. So exactly how does hail form and how does it get so darn big? Well, as we take a look inside of the cloud, it all has to do with the updrafts. Of course, updrafts cause these thunderstorms to form, and the stronger the updraft, it keeps that hailstone kind of floating, bouncing up and down, above and below freezing. But eventually, after some period of time, the weight of the hailstone exceeds the force of the updraft, and that causes the hailstone to fall to the ground. Now, of course, we have seen a myriad of hail sizes with those storms last week. The majority of those hailstones were about quarter ping pong to golf ball size hail. And by the way, once you get to quarter size hail, that is what is considered severe hail. Anything smaller than that isn't going to cause a severe thunderstorm warning to go into effect. But of course, last week we saw hen egg, tennis ball, baseball, softball, even near grapefruit size hail. And of course, when you get to the right side of your screen, the higher end of the spectrum, those types of hailstones become exceedingly rare. But of course, they do happen. Now, how does that happen? It all has to do with the updraft, and depending on how strong that humid and warm air is moving into the thunderstorm, that determines how big the hailstones will get. Now, for that basic severe thunderstorm, that basic quarter-size hail, you need to have an updraft wind going into a thunderstorm of around 49 miles per hour. But once you get to about that golf ball size, 64 mile per hour winds going into the thunderstorm, and of course on the maximum end of the spectrum, we saw up to grapefruit size hail, and that is only something that happens with an updraft speed, winds going into a thunderstorm of near 100 miles per hour. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafiore, KWTX News 10.
We just saw the destructive hail that tore across Central Texas last week, and although it was some of the largest hail our area has seen in quite some time, it wasn't record-breaking. Last April, a tornadic storm tore through southern Bell County, dropping monster hail. A hail research team flew to Central Texas to scan that hailstone. Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor had the chance to talk with the research team and learn more on why it's so important to study hail.
Hail in particular is a really big loss driver when it comes to severe weather. In fact, in any given year, more than 60 to 80% of the damage that we see from severe weather is actually caused by hail. Most people tend to think it's from tornadoes, but it's not. It's hailstones. We see so many hail events that damage property outside, and it really drives up loss. So IBHS spends a lot of time researching hail. We do that research both out in the field across the country and in our laboratory here in Fitchburg, South Carolina.
Tell me about y'all's group that y'all send out to study these potential record-setting hailstones that we see sometimes.
Yeah, our Hail Quick Response team is a couple of us here from the field research team, and we go out very quickly after severe weather events when we may have a record-setting hailstone on our hands. And that group brought me and one of my colleagues down to Salado, Texas back last April after a hailstorm came through, because we saw a picture on social media of a hailstone that was just so big. I've actually got a print of it right here with me. We flew down the day after the storm hit to a homeowner in Salado who had found the stone, and she put it in her freezer because she thought it was interesting, and she happened to tweet about it. We saw her tweet, and we reached out to her with the help of the local National Weather Service office down there in Dallas, and we connected with her to go down and measure the hailstone. She invited us into her home so that we could document it. And many people ask, well, why fly halfway across the country from your lab in South Carolina to scan a hailstone? And it's such important data for us and for the research engineers here at IBHS to have these really good measurements of hailstones. We don't see a lot of hailstones that are quite this big. This stone here from Salado, 5.67 inches in diameter. But getting a precise measurement on something this large and this uniquely shaped is challenging. And that's what 3D scanning really helps us with, is getting those accurate measurements. And it allows us to capture the volume of hailstones. Once we have these 3D prints, it enables us to study more about the aerodynamics of hailstones, because we can replicate their exact geometry. And without 3D scanning them, they melt or sublime away, and we lose some of that time to study them. So 3D printing has really opened up more doors for us in the research side of hail to better understand hail so we can better forecast it and better understand how it impacts us. We've done a couple of these different deployments. Now, Salado wasn't quite the state record. The state record remains the Hondo, Texas hailstone that we 3D scanned the year before, back in 2021. It fell in Hondo. The other component of our field program, beyond just the 3D scanning of the records, is we go out in the field throughout the spring and we deploy instruments in front of hailstorms that can safely measure the impacts of hailstones as a hailstorm passes over our array of instruments. Then we go back afterwards and we collect our instruments, we measure the stones that are on the ground, we 3D scan some of those as well. And then we can compare it to the radar data. So we can really get that ground truth of where the hail actually fell and how big it was compared to what the radar says fell. And that's where we've been able to make these connections between our ground truth data and what the radar says. There are very few research projects that are dedicated to hail. In fact, we're the only one in the US right now that's dedicated to studying hail. There's a project up in Canada now that's also studying hail specifically, but it's not a peril that a lot of folks focus on. Most of your field campaigns are focused on tornadoes and other hazards that come with severe weather. So this data that we collect is pretty unique.
Welcome back to Weather Extra. In this week's Degrees of Science, Brady Taylor had the chance to talk with a NASA researcher that uses the James Webb Telescope to study the atmospheres of planets outside of our solar system. Here's a listen into their conversation.
Now that that planet's been found, what else can y'all learn about that planet with the James Webb Telescope?
Yeah, so actually my personal research interests are mostly once these planets are found, to look at them in more detail and really characterize them. And so this is what I'm most excited about with the James Webb Space Telescope. So the way that we characterize the planets with this telescope is kind of in a similar way that we find planets. So we wait for the planet to pass in front of the star, and some of the light from the star is blocked by the planet. Now, to look at the atmosphere, we can actually do the same thing, wait for the planet to pass in front of the star, and some of the light from the star will actually filter through the atmosphere of the planet. And different molecules like water or methane or carbon dioxide absorb light at different wavelengths. So in Earth's atmosphere, we have ozone, and ozone is famous for absorbing a lot of UV light. And so if we see that there's not much UV light that's making it through the planet's atmosphere, but a lot of visible light, we might say, oh, there's ozone in this planet's atmosphere. And so the James Webb Space Telescope is going to be really, really good. It's the best instrument we've ever had for doing this type of science. And so we've never really been able to look at the atmospheres of a lot of planets. And with James Webb Space Telescope, we're going to be able to do this for the first time.
How far away are these planets that you're trying to tell about their atmosphere?
Yeah, these are tens of light years away. So we've discovered planets that are really far away, on the other side of the galaxy. But in order to see what's in these planets' atmospheres, we have to go with the semi-close planets. And semi-close here is still tens of light years. And so they're still really, really far away. But on the, solar neighborhood grand scheme of things, they're in our neighborhood-ish.
The first one that got confirmed by James Webb was a rocky planet that was somewhat like Earth. What kind of comparisons or differences would that planet y'all found be compared to Earth like we have?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things about looking at these Earth-like planets with James Webb Space Telescope is we're really not going to look at a true Earth analog. So Earth orbits our sun, and most of the rocky planets that we're going to look at with the James Webb Space Telescope are going to orbit these smaller red dwarf stars. And we just, at this point with our instruments, we need to go for the most favorable conditions. So a smaller star, the planet is going to block more of the light, and so you get a larger signal. And also we're going to go for the closer in planets. So these are kind of going to be exotic worlds. They're not really going to be 100% Earth-like worlds. They're going to have rocky surfaces like the Earth, but they're going to get a completely different kind of light because the light from these smaller stars is redder, it's cooler, and the conditions on these planets are going to be really different. So it's Earth-like because it's rocky, but it's not Earth-like because the host star is going to be really different, and they're going to be much closer into their parent star.
So if we were looking, say, or somebody looking at our solar system, so would Mars and Venus, would that be considered Earth-like since they're somewhat close as well?
Yeah, so they're kind of all on the same rocky planet category, but that's a great example of why it's really important to actually look at the atmospheres of these planets. Because if an alien was looking at the sun and they saw 3 rocky planets, Venus and Earth are almost the exact same size, and you would have no idea which planet has life on it just by looking at the size of the planet. You really need to look at the atmosphere, and the atmospheres of Earth and Venus are completely different. Venus is hot. It has lots of carbon dioxide gas. It doesn't have any biosignatures and oxygen, but Earth has water. It has all the signatures of life as we know it. And so that's a really great question and a great reason why looking at the atmospheres is really important instead of just looking at the size distribution of the planets.
To watch the full versions of both Degrees of Science interviews you saw today, scan the QR code behind me to watch on our YouTube page or go to our website, KWTX.com/Degrees of Science. Weather Extra returns right after this break. Despite the recent rainfall, experts say they won't see much difference in our lake levels across central Texas. News 10's Jasmine Lotz spoke with officials on how we should be prepared to conserve water more in the next few months.
Experts say while the rain we've gotten is nice, the amount we've received isn't enough to improve drought conditions anytime soon. Waco's communications specialist, Jessica Emmett-Sellers, says the city's drought conditions is in stage 2 right now. The recent rain has helped to keep Waco in stage 2, but Emmett-Sellers says residents should expect to reach level 3 later this year.
We've been able to kind of postpone switching to stage 3 because of the amount of rain that we've gotten, even though it hasn't been a ton, but it's been enough to sort of postpone that. But it's not really enough to kind of improve the overall conditions.
Belton Lake Park Ranger Cassie Hill predicts the area would need several days of heavy rainfall for Belton and Stillhouse Hollow to see improvements.
We are in a drought in the fact that we are not getting enough rain to fill the lake, but at the same time, we are getting a consistent amount of rain. So it's just kind of a very unusual situation.
She says this causes rangers to alert guests to be cautious if they want to swim or boat in the lakes.
So anytime that we start dropping in water levels, obviously that means that there are now more obstacles in the lake when people are trying to recreate. That's typically what our lakes are used for, is recreation.
Emmett-Sellers says we should concentrate on conserving water now because it's likely more water restrictions will be implemented soon.
We can't predict the weather, but we can try to control our behaviors as humans to make sure we're conserving water. So I definitely recommend that people are thinking about stricter restrictions before they have to.
Well, that is all we have for you for this episode of Weather Extra. Tune in again next weekend for another half hour of weather and science. See you next time.